I can't take it any longer with you. You have ruined my life, my wife, my girlfriend, my home, my job, everything. Ruined it all! Ruined it! Oh! Hey everybody. So that was just a joke. That was a joke right there. Happy Halloween, everybody. So, as you can see, I decided to decorate a little bit. I got a little skull over here, bat, bear, and a pumpkin. And I figure I'm probably not going to get a ton of people on this because it's Halloween and everyone has things they got to do. But I figured it's a tradition. Every year we tell 3 scary stories. And I decided I'm just not – I'm going to do it this year too. But yeah, that's what I got. I got 115 different ideas here. And I'm just going to pull one out and tell the story. And I did have a few announcements to make. I am almost finished the Pumpkin Saga. The pumpkin's still alive right now. But I think I've got it to the point now where everything's all set up to do it. It'll be up very soon. And I'm hoping to have plenty of Halloween stuff going on this week. I don't know for sure. I can't really tell. I have this video I'm making. I'm hoping it'll be available during the week, but we will just see. I got to close that thing there. But anyways, how's everyone doing? The sun is shining like right in the window there. I didn't even notice before. Hold on one sec. All right. Okay, never mind. It didn't work. So anyways, yeah, 3 scary stories to tell. So, yeah. And we'll also do some other stuff too. I have plans on maybe doing Count Dracula. I don't know how long this is going to last. It might just be 30 minutes. But we'll figure it out. Oh, Corey, it's just you. Okay, I was wondering who was there. I was afraid it was somebody who would be mad if I left. But if it's just you, I'm going to go ahead and try and get this sun out of the way. Ugh. Okay, there it goes. Okay, I think we're good now. That was awful. I can't believe it was doing that. It wasn't doing that when I looked at it before. But anyways, Frankie says hi. She won't last too long. Oh. Well, Corey, you want to stay for just a few seconds because we are going to do the scary story. And although I've got ideas in this hat, I would also like ideas from you all. And if you don't know how this game works, it's just something I do every year. I come up with a story, and I pull out something from the hat, like a word, and then I just change the story according to the word. So I guess we should just go ahead and begin. But let's start out though. I was trying to decide what universe, and I guess I'll have to leave a comment below about where to start for the stories. I was trying to decide what universal monster would win in a fight. Now, there's 8 universal monsters. There's Dracula, Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, the Mummy, the Phantom of the Opera, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Bride of Frankenstein, and then there's somebody else. Let's see, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. The Wolfman. So I feel like the Phantom of the Opera would have to be the first to die because he's just like a deformed human. And Frankenstein's a robot, so I feel like he would stand a good chance against a lot of them. But see, what other one would die? I think the Creature of the Black Lagoon actually would die. He's very strong, but he's aquatic. So, like, I don't know. He's not as strong as, like, metal, like Frankenstein. Frankenstein just rip him apart. The Invisible Man, I think, would be in amongst the fight for a long time. But eventually, I think the Wolfman would smell him and kill him. And the Wolfman's pretty tough. Dracula has the power to hypnotize people, which gives him a heck of an advantage. The Mummy is undead. I feel like, though, the thing about a fight, like a death battle, is if you like crumble to dust or something, or they like knock you down to the point where maybe you're still alive, but you're like destroyed, I feel like that's still like a win. You don't actually have to die in a death battle. I think you just have to be restrained. So I feel like the Mummy would die. I feel like Dracula would probably win. She thinks Invisible Man. The Invisible Man does have an advantage because I think if we're taking the standard rules of the death battle, where all the creatures are just thrown into this situation, no preparation time, and they have no knowledge of what's going on, and they're in an area where nobody has an advantage, I feel like the Invisible Man's just going to like pop up. He's just going to be like, maybe they'll hear him. Maybe he'll go like, what the heck's going on? But then they'll be like, well, maybe it was just our imagination. And then he can just kill them all when they're asleep or something. I feel like if the Wolfman doesn't smell the Invisible Man and doesn't kill him, then the Invisible Man will definitely win. Because Dracula still has to go to sleep. He sleeps in his coffin. But if not, I think the Dracula would win because he can hypnotize people. So what would be your vote, Corey? Frankenstein, Dracula. Dracula's pretty tough. He's undead. He can suck blood and stuff. Okay. Well, anyways, I guess I'll tell the story of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And if any of you all want to include Black Lagoon or Godzilla, Godzilla is not a universal monster. That is, he's from Japan. But yes, if Godzilla was in the fight, he would obviously win. I do admit Dracula can hypnotize creatures, but I don't think like Godzilla he could hypnotize, which brings up a good point. Could the Wolfman be hypnotized since he is like an animal? I think the answer is actually yes, because the Wolfman picks his prey sometimes, and it seems like the Wolfman does have like some level of intellect going on there. I feel like he could be hypnotized. Godzilla, I mean, can animals be hypnotized in the same way that people are? I don't know. I think it's like a different type of hypnotism. But I think I've seen animals get hypnotized, though, like by music and stuff, so you could make that argument. Still, Dracula would have to be at the level of Godzilla. So, no, I think Godzilla would definitely be the winner. The creature of the Black Lagoon is very strong. There's no water in this fight. That would just be too much of an unfair advantage for him. So, yeah, I would say I'm going with Dracula, but I think that the Invisible Man and Godzilla would definitely have if it was a fight, they'd have a chance. I think all of it's probability. Sometimes maybe the Invisible Man would win, sometimes Dracula would win, sometimes the creature of the Black Lagoon would win. So there's really so it's like percentages, but I think the one that would have the best shot might be Dracula, maybe just by like 1 or 2 points. But like also Godzilla. Yeah, if Godzilla was in the fight, I think he would win, actually. I changed my mind. But if Dracula didn't have him to take care of, it would probably be him, I think. But I feel like Dracula is the leader, too, of the group whenever they have those universal monster movies. They're very good. And if anyone's wondering, I think The Bride of Frankenstein is my favorite. Those are good movies. If you guys want to watch those are really good. But anyways, let's go ahead and tell the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Excuse me, retold. So how this is going to work is every minute I'm going to bring out a new word and change the story a little bit. So like if I'm like telling the story and then a word comes out, I have to change the story according to the word. So just give it 20 seconds. I want to start at 10 minutes so that I can tell people in the comments to go to the 10-minute mark if they want to watch it, or maybe I'll just make like a tag or something. Maybe I'll edit it later. I hear you can do that with live videos, and I haven't been taking advantage of that. All right, shaking them around. Oh, Oh, nope, nope, gotta put those back. All right. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And I don't know this story by heart. I'm just going to be kind of making it up. All right. So let's start with apples. It was the town of Tarrytown, a quiet and pleasant place where everyone enjoyed the apple harvests. There was Ichabod Crane and Katrina Van Tassel and Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt. He had a very unusual name. His father was a little bit of a weirdo. But anyways, they all enjoyed sitting around and eating apples together under the sun, relaxing in the peace, looking at the butterflies and the birds. This is what they did every year in Tarrytown. And sometimes someone would say, well, let's tell stories late into the night. So they would. They'd tell stories late into the night. And one of the stories they would tell was the tale of the creature of Sleepy Hollow. Now, the creature of Sleepy Hollow was said to be a creature that rode a llama. And he had a pumpkin head and he wore a long black cloak. And they said that he had a shrieking laugh. And whenever he came riding down the bridge or through the town, it is said to be fire and smoke and coals shooting up everywhere he walked. And the people would all keep their houses locked, and they'd watch from the windows to see this ghastly spirit and wonder where he came from and what was his purpose in life. Well, Ichabod Crane himself was a preacher of the creature. He said that there was no doubt that such things existed in the world, and to doubt them was to disbelieve in the Bible and all the stories that have been told for years and the people that had told them. And how could you doubt such a thing, really? But Ichabod Crane put on his glasses and would teach the children all the things they needed to know in the world. In the schools, he'd be teaching them philosophy, science, social studies, history, geometry. And every day, the children, they looked up to Ichabod, even though he wasn't really the best of teachers. He was a bit of a drunkard, for one thing. And to be honest, he was always looking for money. And in fact, one of the reasons why he was always hanging out with Katrina Van Tassel was because her family was very wealthy. He'd take her out and they'd go apple picking because that was what the town of Tarrytown was known for eating apples. But he would woo her and charm her, and she was rather dumb in this way and would always fall for Ichabod's tricks. And of course, this made Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt very angry. But one day, Ichabod brought her socks. And Katrina looked at them and said they were the most perfect, most beautiful socks that she had ever seen. And he asked her if she would take his hand in marriage. And she looked at the socks for a moment and she looked at him. And this was how they did it in Tarrytown. When people wanted to get married, they'd give each other socks and then they'd have a wedding. So she said, all right, I accept. And so the marriage was planned. Now, this made Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt very angry. He'd sit at the bar and say how Ichabod was so foolhardy and what she could possibly see in him. After all, he thought that he was just for the money, which, to be honest, was quite true. So, anyways, one day, Ichabod took the children to the zoo, and he was telling them about how he was going to marry Katrina Van Tassel when he bumped into Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt. And when he bumped into him, he exclaimed, "Oh, I'm sorry, my good sir. I was just telling the children all about my marriage and where the wedding is going to be planned in August. You and Katrina are good friends. Would you like to come?" And he sort of grunted and said, "Well, all right. What day is it?" "Well, October 31st. And Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt said, "Well, you shouldn't have the wedding that day. You know that's the day where the monster of Sleepy Hollow rides in on his llama and spooks the citizens. And Ichabod Crane sort of began to perspire as he realized that he'd forgotten about how this was the day of the legendary creature's ride. But anyways, Ichabod said, well, I better go to mail something. The word is mail. I better go and mail a letter to my wife and tell her that I can't have it that day. So he went and he got an envelope and he sent it off to Katrina. But the letter didn't arrive. It never made it there. And there's still a little bit of a mystery exactly why, although there are some theories. But anyways, I won't get into those just yet. But anyways, Ichabod decided that he'd have to go and send the letter himself. So he took the bag, but, as he was going through town, he decided he'd stop by the tavern and have a few drinks. And Abraham Brown Bones Van Brunt was there. And as it so happened, the Titanic was sailing that day. So it was quite a party. Everyone was getting ready for the sailing of the Titanic. And people were having as many drinks. And people were giving Ichabod plenty of drinks. And Ichabod was getting very drunk. And he looked and he saw what time it was, and he realized that it was almost night, and he wasn't going to be able to send his letter to Katrina Van Tassel unless he hurried, because, of course, the monster was going to arrive. So he left the bar, and as he left, he couldn't help but notice that Abraham Bones Van Brunt was watching him leaving the bar. So anyways, off he headed off on his horse, and as he rode, he sort of laughed to himself. Maybe it was a little silly to believe there was a monster riding around on a llama terrorizing citizens. But as he walked, he noticed that something was going on in the wind. His hat had flown off as if some force had pushed it off, and he tried to retrieve the hat, but it had disappeared. Well, this made Ichabod nervous. He began to shiver, and he looked around, trying to figure out what was causing that wind. And as he rode, other thoughts began to fill his head, like, why was it so dark outside? Why was there no stars? And then a mist began to settle all around the town. He looked around, trying to figure out what exactly it was that was bothering him so much, because there was this deep thing, this deep feeling inside of him, as if something was waking up from the grave. But as he rode up to the bridge, he remembered the story. And he noticed that an owl was sitting on the top of the bridge, and it was looking down at him, and it had almost red eyes, or at least that's what he thought. It was hard to tell in the dark light exactly what color they were. And as he looked up, he sort of smiled at the owl, and he said to himself, well, I'm a learned man. There really can't be such thing as ghosts or anything like that. It'll be all right. I can't miss out on all of this money. But then, when he got to the end of the bridge, he saw it. A creature sitting on top of a llama with a pumpkin head and great fiery eyes. And all around it, shadows grew. And the creature looked at him for a moment, and Ichabod was about to make a run for it. But before he could, the creature of Sleepy Hollow, what are the odds, right? That Sleepy Hollow would come out on that one. But the creature of Sleepy Hollow let out a loud shriek, and Ichabod made a ride for it. He rode as fast as he could. He couldn't think any more of Katrina Van Tassel or her deep pockets. All he could think of was getting out of there before that creature caught up with him. And the creature did indeed start riding after him as fast as it could. And they went down the street, and Ichabod wanted to go to the houses and try to get inside, but he was smart enough to realize that all the doors were probably locked and all the people were sheltering in fear of the creature. But he rode on, and the creature followed and followed, and the creature and Ichabod noticed a ramp that was situated in the middle of town, and Ichabod decided he had only one shot at this. He would have to do, as they said, they didn't have Dukes of Hazzard back then, but they had a similar story of a bunch of Englishmen that rode around in carriages and horses and would like ride away from the Americans, and they would go up ramps and escape. It was a very weird series of newspaper articles. I don't know. But anyways, Ichabod rode as fast as he could up the ramp, and he flew up into the air, and the creature came flying behind him, and they were both soaring through the midnight sky, and the creature threw its pumpkin head at Ichabod, and the head fell right down on his head, and he let out a scream, and all the people in town could see them both up there in the sky, flying through the air. And after that, well, nobody really knows what happened. Some say that Ichabod Crane was eaten by a bunch of praying mantises, that all the insects climbed up him and ate him whole, ate his eyeballs. I don't know why the people said that, but there were a lot of people drunk in Tarrytown. It wasn't just Ichabod and Abraham Brom Bones Van Brunt. Everybody in Tarrytown was just drunks. But Ichabod was also said to have gone on to another town, and that he did indeed live. And if that anyone ever mentioned the story of Sleepy Hollow to him, he would sort of shiver, but he would run off and say nothing about it and act like he didn't know what the person was talking about. Now, on the subject of Abraham Brom Bones Van Brunt, well, he did indeed get married to Katrina Van Castle, and the two of them shot off in a rocket ship to the planet Mars. And they lived there with the alien race for the rest of their life. And it really was the most beautiful and happy marriage. And there's still some that say that maybe Abraham Brom Bones Van Brunt was the creature of Sleepy Hollow. As after he left on that rocket ship to Mars, no one ever heard from him. But to be honest, it's still unknown to this day. We may never know what happened in Tarrytown or whether the creature was real. But if you ask me, well, there's a lot more things out there than, well, to quote Shakespeare, the human mind can fathom. And now we will move on to the second story of the night. Thank you, Corey. This has been a interesting improv. I really enjoy this. This has been fun. I always like doing this. And by the way, if anyone wants to include a word, make up their own word, we can definitely do that. I've got like 115 in here. I went really overboard, but if anyone wants to come up with their own idea of how to interrupt the story, I'd love to hear it. And we are going to do now Seth versus Zombies. I know this was a video I did, and I should mention none of this is canon to almost everything lore. This is all just for fun. It's stupid. It's just something this is a game I like to do. I'd really like to do it with other people, but I never really get the opportunity, so I'm doing it now. This is just my thing. I don't know why. There's just something about it. But now we're doing Seth versus the Zombies. I am going to retell this classic redheaded baby. Redheaded baby. Oh, is that one of the words? Okay, how about this? For the third story, I will tell about a redheaded baby and make it incredibly scary. It's going to be about Francis. So, Corey, I hope you can stay because I really want you to hear this story. We'll do it around probably, I don't know, 40-minute mark. I'm going to do a second story, so you got a little bit of time. But anyways, now I'm going to tell Seth versus the Zombies and just mess up the story as much as I possibly can. So, Seth versus the Zombies. All right. We should start with one word. The Grim Reaper. Gorman was sitting outside. He had gone a long way in his travels, and the Grim Reaper was always following him, or at least he thought he saw him. Sometimes he'd see a shadow out in the distance, or he'd think he'd see a creature walking through the forest in black robes with a face like a bone. But perhaps it was simply a trick of his eyes. Gorman had found a house that he could have shelter in. The world had changed much in the past few years. Where once man had lived, now new creatures had awoken from the chaos. From the abyss of madness, things had came that were undescribable, creatures of the dead and, well, of fairy tale. Not only zombies, but werebears and aliens and all the things that mankind had imagined had entered the world. But to be fair, the undead was the most common. The undead were everywhere. The people that Gorman had loved for so long were all out there now as bloodthirsty monsters ready to eat your brains if you came close. But when Gorman went into the house, he found some crabs and began to eat them, not even caring whether or not they were good. He was so hungry, he couldn't even mind. He figured he might as well chew down as many crabs as he could and get as much energy, and if he threw them all up, that was fine too. He had been so long without food or water that he was willing to eat or drink anything. As he sat there, he noticed two figures approaching, and he pulled out his gun because he always kept it by his side. It was given to him by the U.S. government. He was actually on a mission to try and find some peaceful lands, some peaceful places for the human species to live, although he didn't have much hope. Still, he always did as his boss ordered him to. But as the figures drew closer, he realized that they were two women. And they were carrying penguins with them. As they came up, he noticed that it was a celebrity he'd heard about from the past, Marissa Boulevard, and the other one he recognized too as Nora Peterson. But as they drew closer, Marissa said, "Oh, my penguins, yes. Okay, go over to him. Forget about it. Hello there, my good friend. My name is Marissa Boulevard, and this is my assistant, Nora Peterson." And she gave a slight nod. She wasn't much for talking in these times or in this world. And we are looking for a place to stay. We were wondering if we might bunker down with you for a little while. Gorman shrugged and said, "This isn't my home." "Well," said Marissa, "it's been very bad out there. Killer mooses have been attacking us for some time now, and we just need a place to stay for a while. Would you mind if we bunkered down with you?" And Gorman said, "Again, it's not really my home, but you can stay here if you like." "Oh, good, good. And I was wondering if we could have a little bit of that food that you have below you, those crabs." Gorman said, "Well, they're probably not good." "Oh, we don't mind," said Marissa. So they all sat down at the table, and they began to eat crabs and drink water, and Gorman explained how he was on a mission from the U.S. government to find peaceful lands. And as they were sitting there, Marissa thought she heard a noise outside. She looked out the window and said, "Oh, there is a bunch of pigs out there." Indeed there were, but they weren't the kind of pigs maybe Marissa was no used to, for these were zombie pigs. An entire horde of them were walking up and oinking their way towards the house. And Marissa said, "Oh, well, I'll have to get these penguins here to fight them. Don't worry. Come on, my little ones." She said, I used to have ducks, but I got tired of ducks in this world. You need something a little more violent." And Gorman said, "Are penguins really violent?" "Oh, yes," she said. Have you ever seen March of the Penguins? No, penguins are very violent. They are very, very violent. They kind of scare even me. And she threw them out, and she closed the door and said, "You know, I was going to turn you into a skeleton if you didn't allow us to stay here, but since you were so nice, I, of course, couldn't do that." And Gorman said, "It's all right. It's trying times for all of us. But, I have to be getting out of here. I have to find peaceful settlement. And also, I've got word that there's a place down in Oakland where there might be somebody who can help me, somebody who can get me information on how to get out of this hellhole that we live in now." "Well, I shall help you," said Marissa. "Right, Nora?" And Nora just nodded her head, because again, she wasn't much for talking. But as they listened, they could hear that the penguins were doing their best to stop all these zombie pigs, for, as we all know, zombie pigs are afraid of penguins. But anyways, Freddy Krueger, oh gosh, Freddy Krueger came bursting through the door, and he grabbed hold of Marissa, and he began to cut open her face, and she let out a scream, and Nora made a run for it with Gorman, and they both ran as fast as they could. Luckily, Marissa was able to get away, but they finally came towards a car that was speeding down the road, and they flagged it down, and Gorman wasn't sure if the person was friendly or not, but he decided he'd have to risk it. And the person pulled down the window, and to Marissa and Nora's astonishment, the person looked surprisingly like Seth. Although it wasn't an exact copy, they did look a little bit differently from each other, the square shoulders and all. But anyways, Seth said, "What seems to be the problem?" And Gorman said, "We're being chased by zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger. And penguins, kind of. They're zombie pig penguins now." And Seth said, "Hop in." And so all three of them jumped into the back, and they all began speeding down the highway. But meanwhile, the zombie pigs and the penguin zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger were all thinking to themselves exactly how they were going to capture Seth, Gorman, Marissa, and Nora. But anyways, they all went speeding down the road, and eventually they found a place to stop and get water and food. And Seth explained how he had actually been an actor on a television show, the Teddy Bear Show. And Gorman and Marissa and Nora listened to him tell stories from that experience. And Mr. explained, "Oh, back in the day, I was a star myself. I did very well for myself. Have you ever heard of the giant octopus monster from outer space? I was in that movie. Did a lot of horror movies. Kind of weird that now all the horror movies are coming to life." And Seth walked over to Gorman and said, "I say we head towards the lighthouse. Going to Oakland is far too risky, and to be completely honest, I don't trust this girl. What's her name? Marissa Boulevard. I heard back in the Hollywood days she was quite a lot to handle and even shot quite a few people. She didn't kill them, but she shot quite a few people." And Gorman said, "Well, she's been pleasant enough, I suppose, but yes, you're right. I do get a bad feeling about her, something in her eyes. Still, it would be wrong to just abandon her here, and she hasn't done any wrong to us, so we can't assume it's anything but our imaginations. Let's head to Oakland and figure out exactly where we're going to do and where we're going to go and what we're going to do." So that's what they agreed upon. They headed down to Oakland. And when they arrived there was a crowd of people at the pavilion, and they were all gathered around Edwin, who was holding a pumpkin in his hand. And Edwin explained, "This pumpkin right here is the key to our survival. Inside of it is the antidote to zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger, and also some zombie pig penguins that I've heard about, although it's just rumors right now. I don't know if they're actually true. But anyways, I need someone to come with me to the laboratory where we can design this pumpkin to create weaponry that will shoot these kind of pumpkin hybrid things all across the world and end the zombie apocalypse." Well, Gorman, Seth, and Marissa, and Nora, and were listening to this, and Gorman said, I'm an agent, and he handed over his identification, explained, we were supposed to come here and collect these things. I know we are a little bit late, but we'd like to go ahead and do it now. And Edwin said, oh, by all means. But just at that moment, he was attacked by an alligator. That's the card. And indeed, all these creatures were now falling from the sky. Animals of all kinds, sharks, grizzly bears. It was like, as Gorman remembered, the movie Sharknado, only all the creatures, not just sharks. Gorman turned to Seth and said, well, this whole world is becoming a horror movie, and now we're in the midst of Sharknado. And anyways, he said, well, let's get out of here. And they grabbed hold of the pumpkin and they started to run. But at that moment, the zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger and the zombie penguins were coming. And they all started attacking the citizens. And finally, one of them managed to capture Beatnik. And they grabbed hold of him, and Beatnik was actually there. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. But they grabbed him, and Freddy Krueger loosed his long, rake-like appendages. For now, his hands had turned into rakes, and he scoop out his body parts. And Seth, Gorman, Marissa, and Norma rode as fast as they could with their pumpkin to the laboratory to create the ultimate weapon, as the screams of Beatnik could be heard behind them. Well, eventually, they arrived at the laboratory, and Gorman showed his clearance, and they were surprised to see an individual that looked a little bit like Seth and Gorman, although his hair was much more puffy. He introduced himself as Harold Douglas, and they all shook hands, and they went inside, and there was a woman there as well, and a little girl, Ginny and Emily. But anyways, Harold began to examine the pumpkin for a few seconds and said, all right, well, I think this might do it. This might be the way to destroy the zombie pigs. I've been working on something in my lab, and it hadn't seemed to figure out yet. But anyways, he then said, so the only problem with this thing is it won't work for mummies. I hope that there isn't too many mummies in the horde of creatures. And Gorman said, well, no, just zombie pigs and zombie penguins and also Freddy Krueger for some reason. But anyways, as they were all sitting there discussing how exactly they were going to shoot off this pumpkin weaponry, they heard a bang on the window, and they looked up to see that there was indeed a mummy standing there. And they all began to race towards the elevator, but there was just too many of them. And finally, Marissa said, I think I shall stay behind. I don't know why, but I feel it is my destiny to die this way. I've always loved my penguins, and I've always been a big believer in aliens. I think, and that's the card, aliens. And I think that they will come and save me in the end. For such a beautiful creature of me had to have been watched by all the creatures of the universe. And I'm sure they will not let me die. So finally, Gorman and Seth and Harold all agreed, and they went up on the elevator to the very top of the building, and they looked around, and there's hordes of monsters and creatures of all kinds watching from below. And Gorman said, well, I guess we aren't going to make it. There's no possible way we can defeat these creatures, and the pumpkin stuff isn't going to work. How are we supposed to shoot this stuff out at them? We've only got one dose, and that was supposed to be saved for the president, so he could figure out a way to make a weapon that could destroy all these creatures. But just at that moment, they saw a helicopter flying towards them, and Harold explained, yeah, I actually just called the President of the United States. Isn't it crazy? No, I have him on alert, so we're all good, really. I think all of us are probably going to survive except Marissa. And just at that moment, Marissa came running up the stairs. I don't know what I was thinking. I am not the kind or type of person that would ever sacrifice her life for anyone, although I shall miss my penguins. But at that moment, the zombie penguins came up from the roof, and Marissa pulled out her gun and shot them, just dead right there. And she said, all right, well, really, I don't care about them either. Let's just get out of here. So anyways, they all jumped up onto the helicopter, and it was quite a lot of people, but they were able to fit everyone, although the weight, it was really pushing them down. But they flew off with the president to the White House, where they all had cupcakes and discussed how they were going to shoot these pumpkin bomb things all across the world. And the president explained, so yeah, I don't know if this is going to work. I mean, I just don't think that these pumpkins really are going to kill all of the zombies. There's also a whole bunch of other creatures. So I think we should just shoot off in a spacecraft and get out of here. And they all looked at each other and agreed. And so off they went in a spacecraft to a new world, a world where hopefully they wouldn't have to worry about zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger and all the nightmares of the world that had woken up from the abyss. And I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they made it to the planet Mars, and set up a society, and had a good life with Abraham Braun Bones Van Brunt and Katrina Van Tassel. Personally, I mean, thinking about it scientifically, yeah, that's probably what happened. Probably they all lived happily with Abraham and Katrina. You know what? Screw it. That's what happened. It's an improvised story anyways. It's not real. That is exactly what happened. They all stayed on Mars and lived happily ever after. And that is the end of that story. Now we have one more to go. And we are actually running really late. This was only going to be a half an hour. But whatever, whatever. I'd like Corey to be here for this. I guess I could text her just to tell her that we're doing the redheaded baby story. Oh, I think she's here. It says, bravo, Mars. Okay, good. Corey, you are here to hear the story of the redheaded baby. I have to say, folks, I just have to stop for a moment. I haven't told a story in a long time because I've been so busy with YouTube and stuff. I used to do it all the time. Oh, good. You're here. Is Francis there too? Hold on. Oh, well, I'll just wait for the comment. But anyways, I haven't told a story in so long, and it's good to know that I at least have something building up still in there, some stories coming out. Because I was afraid I might have lost it from being so absent from storytelling. But yeah, it's good. Oh, all right. Well, she's going to hear the story. Keep her up for a little while, because she's going to hear the horror story of the red-headed baby right after I get a drink of water. The red-headed baby. All right. Let's pull out the first word. This is a horror story, and I don't want to ruin anything for you all, but the red-headed baby is probably going to be the evil one. I mean, you can't have a title like that without the red-headed baby being the villain. Sorry. Turtle. Okay. That's how the story's to start. Turtle. The little turtle sat and watched as a mother, her husband, and her little red-headed baby came out of the hospital that night. The turtle was a spirit, and she watched all the creatures, and she knew when great evil would arrive in the world. Now, the turtle was instructed not to interfere in these matters. She would simply have to watch. But as she saw them going down the road, she couldn't help but feel, well, a little bit frightened for them all, and what the baby was going to be, a creature and a being of vast powers, of things of the great creatures of darkness. But, of course, all that could change, maybe if the baby was properly taken care of. But would she be? Would the mother and father be able to stop the evil that was brimming inside the red-headed baby? Well, they got to their little home. It was just a very small little place in the middle of a nice little countryside. And the mother sang the little red-headed baby a lullaby, and she didn't really notice that the baby was looking at her and seemed to understand everything she was saying, almost as if she had heard the song before, as if she had heard all the stories before 1,000,000 times over. But as she put her to bed, the mother and the father went into the bedroom, and the father said, "I don't know, my dear. There's something about that child. I feel I feel something when she's present, something old, something, well, do you feel it too? And the mother looked at him and said, oh, it's just your imagination, fatherhood jitters. But anyways, at that moment, a duck came flying through the window and crashed, and it began quacking all around. I couldn't tell the word is duck. And the duck began flapping its wings around, and the father grabbed hold of the duck and said, we don't even have a duck. Where did this come from? And the mother said, oh, this is an omen. I can tell it's an omen of something bad. Perhaps your feeling was right. And so they took the duck down, and as the father was taking the duck outside, he noticed that there was a turtle sitting out on the side of the road. And he looked at it for a moment, but then shrugged his shoulders, thinking nothing of it and thinking nothing of what it might represent too. But anyways, they both went back in, and the husband laughed and said, oh, it was just a random duck flying through the air in the middle of the night. Nothing to be afraid of. But anyways, they went to bed, and during the night, the mother had a bunch of bad dreams, and the father did as well. Dreams of the baby rising up in a world of giant babies all crowding around and gathering together in the darkness, and them screaming and screaming and screaming. They weren't sure exactly what it was that this army was after, but they were all of the babies of the world were going together and fight back against the adults and the children and the teenagers, the people that were taking over the world, even though they had been there first. But anyways, the mother woke up in a sweat. She let out a scream, and the father looked down at her and said, did you have the same dream about the babies taking over the world? And she nodded her head, and the father said, well, we have no choice. We will have to see a psychic and figure out what's going on here. I have a feeling that there's more to this than we might at first know. But anyways, they headed out, first feeding their pandas, because they had a whole bunch of pandas. They were panda farmers. They it was a weird time. They were in China, I guess. No, I guess they weren't. No. Okay, that was the one mistake of the night. They were not in China. They just had a panda farm, and they milk pandas and they eat their meat and stuff. It's a different universe, okay? Just go with it. But anyways, they began driving down the road to the psychic with the little baby sitting there in the car seat. But anyways, the mother turned to the father and she said, maybe we're being silly. Nothing that bad has happened yet. It's probably just our imaginations. After all, it was just a dream. The father said, you know how we feel about this in my family. Whenever supernatural things start happening, we've got to take them seriously. But anyways, just at that moment, a star fell down from the sky, and it crashed down and it landed right beside the driving car. And the mother let out a scream, and the father let out a scream, and they walked out of the car, and they went up to the crater, and then they went back, and they noticed that the red-headed baby had a toy star in its mouth. And indeed, the red-headed baby was looking a little bit too old to be a baby. It was still a baby, but its hair had all started to grow out even more, and its teeth were all jagged, and its eyes were brimming like a demon's. And the father said, there can be no doubt about it all now. Our daughter is something, some evil spirit, some creature, and its evil must be extinguished. And so finally they arrived at the psychic. Oh, we're running out of time. We've got like 11 minutes. I'm going to have to hurry this. And anyways, the psychic had a whole bunch of bees. She was a bee farmer, and she brought them in, and she said, well, my dears, so it appears you have an evil child. Yes, the bees are already telling me all I need to know. Look at them buzzing around. It seems that they sense the evil in her. And the father said, can you get rid of it? Can you rid our child from its evil? And she said, I think that I can. I do know of a spell that takes out the spirits of darkness from the child, but it will be difficult. I am going to need a few items. And she went back and she began rustling around in her drawers, pulling out bones and books that were all matted together, the pages, and a bunch of charms. And finally she said, aha, here it is. My old hot air balloon. And it was a very big drawer that she pulled out the bag and she said, we are going to fly up into the air and I will chant the prayer to the sun. And hopefully we can finally rid this baby of its evil. So off they rode, high up in the sky with the red-headed baby. And the woman began chanting her words. Spirit of the sky, please rid this baby of its evil spirit. May it be good, may it be proper. But just at that moment, dark clouds began to form in the sky, and lightning began to crash, and the thunder roared, and all around was fear. And the old woman said, oh, there is something truly evil at play, some dark being. And as they looked out into the sky, they saw it, the true form of evil. Well, okay, second mistake of the knife. I get 3. And evil choo-choo train. And the choo-choo train began coming forward at them as a giant black cloud. And the fortune teller said, we have no power here against this thing. The choo-choo train is far too powerful. I know of this spirit. And the father and mother watched, and the baby was screaming at the top of its lung and wanted to join forces with its master. But anyways, the choo-choo train hit the hot air balloon, and they all went falling down from the sky. And the mother was screaming, and the father was screaming. And all at once, they started to realize that they were floating gently down towards the ground. And the father looked at the mother, and the mother looked at the father, and they looked down at the baby, and they noticed that its hands were reaching out, and it seemed to be making sure that the mother and father made it safely to the ground. And the father said, well, our little baby is a witch indeed. She's not trying to kill us after all. And they finally landed down safely on the ground along with the old woman. And the little baby began to speak. The truth is, no, I was going to kill you all. That was the entire plan. But, you know, I guess you've all been so nice. You've changed my diaper, and you've been good to me, and I just don't feel the desire to be evil anymore. You know, it's so stupid, really, when you stop and think about it. Why are creatures evil and destroy each other? It doesn't really bring about anything at all. In the end, maybe evil is just not really necessary in the world. Maybe we should all strive to be good. And just at that moment, the father picked up some manure and said, hold on a second. And he threw the manure up in the sky, and he hit, and manure is the word, he hit, if you couldn't tell, the choo-choo train. And the choo-choo train was covered on all this manure, and he could smell the stench, and the choo-choo train began driving back into the sky. And the baby said, begone, choo-choo train. I no longer have any desire to be like you. Go, my evil spirit. And the evil spirit left, and the baby looked around at them and said, well, I was really expecting to not be able to talk now, or like have all these psychic powers, but I guess you all are going to have to deal with it. And the father said, indeed. I think that in the end of all things, that you will always have a little bit of evil left in you, and we shall just simply have to deal with it. But perhaps we can raise you to be a sheep, to be a good creature of the world, and follow the good creatures of the people of Jesus Christ, like Jesus Christ led the sheep to a promised land. Come, our little one. And so they all went off, and the old woman and the turtle was sitting by, and she smiled and realized she didn't have to interfere after all, that most of the time human beings could figure out things themselves. But then she thought to herself, well, just in case, maybe I'll stick around. And that is all. I think that is the perfect way to end the stories. And we managed to go pretty close to an hour. So I don't have anything else for you all, though. I hope you all enjoyed that story. Maybe you learned a lesson. But you got to remember that choo-choo train could always be around. It could always be lurking. By the way, I did know that it was going to get a little dark in here as I was telling these stories, but I was like, it's Halloween. That's the whole point, right? But yeah, I don't really have anything else for you all. I'm going to end here in just a second, but stay with me just for a second, as I guess I could tell you what I dressed up for Halloween this year. I went as a disco man. I did bring it. Hold on. So I went as a disco guy for Halloween this year. I went down to the school, and it was weird because this whole time at Yawk Glades, usually every year at Yawk Glades, people are like, hey, there's that guy from that YouTube channel, or there's that guy from that TikTok channel. No one did that this year. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And then I wore this wig, and everyone was like, oh, wait, that's that guy from that YouTube channel. That's that guy from the TikTok channel. So I guess people are having a hard time recognize me unless I have my wig on, which is kind of weird. Boy, though, that was fun. I just love doing that every year. Those were scary, and those were scary stories, weren't they? I mean, the story about the choo-choo train, the story about the Sleepy Hollow monster riding a llama, the story about Seth and Gorman taking on an army of zombie penguin pigs and zombie pigs and Freddy Krueger. Just all really terrifying. But yeah. All right. Well, anyways, this is pretty much the end. So anyways, I'll try to have some more content this week for sure. Maybe a couple of videos. I don't know. I got some new costumes, a cape. I've had that skull for a while, though. The bear mask is fairly new, I guess. But the pumpkin's still doing pretty good, right? That is a tough pumpkin. So I do have a second challenge where I put rubber bands around the pumpkin, but I was a little afraid it might be too boring. Oh, thanks, Uncle Seth. Did Frankie enjoy the story? Was she scared? Was she scared? That was a little scary. So, yeah, I imagine that family's going to have a lot of problems with that child, though. I mean, that's talking baby. I mean, it's going to be like scientists are going to be crowding around that baby trying to figure out what exactly is going on. But anyways, I imagine that if they hadn't won against the choo-choo train, the whole world would have just been taken over by babies. That is... No, she did. She did, Corey. She understood that story. That you're full of it. No. She could understand. No. But anyways, yeah, I imagine the whole world would have been taken over by babies if things had played out differently. And you know what? The Seth versus Zombie one, part of that's true. Part of the stuff in that is true. Why not? I don't really care. But she'll understand when she's older, I guess, when she turns 4. Like, that was fun, though. Anyways, I guess we're getting close to the end here. Whew, it is hot, though. I have been sweating this entire time. I don't know if you all notice, but yeah, that was good. We defeated the evil doll too. That was nice. No, that was a joke. That was a joke. The evil doll is not real. But anyways, yeah, I guess we're at the end. I hate to end it off. It has been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of different things here. And I feel bad for that dad for getting all that manure on his hand too. That was sad. But what was the odds though that the Sleepy Hollow card, because there's 115, that was the only one. The Sleepy Hollow card appears during that story. That is absolutely insane. But thank you all for joining me. And once again, we have traveled into the abyss of madness and stared into the eyes of death itself and heard 3 terrifying tales. Maybe next year I'll do 3 really scary stories, but I don't know. I have a lot of fun doing this. Maybe we'll just keep it up. Let me know in the comments what you think we should do. And see you all. My hand. Great. No, I'm fine. It's just, I don't know. I'm going to have to perform an exorcism, I think. I'm going to have to find that old lady with the bees. Damn Choo-choo train. Bye, y'all. Bah! It scare you? End.